All right, welcome back, everybody. So today's going to be a very code-heavy episode. We're going to be creating the back-end part of our inventory system so that we can save it in between playthroughs. So let's dive right in. Hey there, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about how to actually save our inventory between play sessions so that we have some idea of what the player's inventory should be so that when they come back they're not starting from zero again every time. Now this is going to be building on some of the lessons that we learned earlier when we were creating a save system. So I'm not going to be coding everything live, but I will still be explaining every line of code as we go. So first thing I want to do is just talk about how our game save manager is set up right now. So the game save manager exists for two reasons. One, to make objects persist between scenes. So this game save manager exists in the background always, and it's always going to know the value of these, in my case, 5 things. Whether chest A is open or closed, whether chest B is open or closed, whether or not, I don't know why I have bow in there. That's weird. That was supposed to be player's inventory for the way I was doing it before, because I'm doing it differently now. The player's magic, the heart containers, and then chest A's value, like I said. We're going to create another script here that's going to specifically save the inventory information. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into inventory. I'm going to create a new C# script, and I'm going to call this inventory saver. And I'm going to open that up in Visual Studio, but I'm also going to make sure that I open up a few other scripts because we're going to need to make some changes here. The other scripts I need to change are inventory item and player inventory. So as soon as I get those up and running here. Okay, so on the player inventory, and I had done this off screen, but because this is like the 4th time I think I've recorded this video, we're going to add this, so this is the player inventory script. We're going to add this attribute is what it's called, system.serializable. System.serializable allows an asset to be serialized, which means saved to a file. I'm also going to add the same thing to our inventory item script, system.serializable. Those are the two things we're going to need to make sure that we're able to serialize. Now, in our inventory saver script, I'm going to make this very similar to my game save manager. So similar, in fact, that I'm actually going to copy a few different methods. So I'm going to copy, and I'm going to go over all of these. So don't worry too much here. But in my game save manager, which you can find at the GitHub link, I'm going to copy those methods. And I'm going to jump back over to inventory here, inventory saver, and I'm going to paste those methods in. Don't want you right now. Okay, so this is going to cause a few issues here, but we're going to solve them as we go. So first, the game save manager, what it did is it referred to a list of objects, and now that I've just copied those methods over, it's looking for what those objects are. For our case, for our objects, we're going to use the objects that are in the list for the player's inventory. So I'm going to make a reference to the player's inventory. So system.serializable. This is going to be a private player inventory, and I'm just going to call it my inventory. I want that to be capitalized. All right. So rather than, not system.serializable. Good Lord. I meant for this to be serialized field. There we go. Okay. And instead of going over objects, we're going to go over my inventory, and then I want to go over all the items in my inventory, which I just happen to also name my inventory. So it's going to be myinventory.myinventory.count. Now this file is here because we're not using the proper using tags. And I could tell you what using tag to put up here. However, let's talk about a feature that Visual Studio has, because I don't often talk about some of Visual Studio's cooler features. So I'm going to highlight this, and then off to the side, this little light pops up. This is called the Quick Actions menu. I'm going to drag that down, and it says maybe you want to use system.io, and I actually do, and it automatically adds it. Now I want to save my inventory items as not .dat. I want to save them as .inv, and I want to do that for both of these. And I won't actually be using that reset scriptables too much here. I'm going to take these on enable and on disable methods, and I'm going to cut them from where they are. I'm going to paste them up here at the top just so that things make a bit more sense. So we've got our on enable and on disable reset scriptables, and let's look at the save scriptables. So same issue as before, we need myinventory.myinventory.count. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it here. And now we need something for the binary formatter. So for the binary formatter, again, I'm going to go to my quick actions, and I need to add system.runtime.serialization.formatters.binary. And if I click on that, it adds that using tag up here right away. Nice and simple. Now I want this to be saving again, not as .dat, but as .inv. And I'm going to change this to myinventory.myinventory. Okay. And don't worry, we're still going to go over all of these lines of code, so bear with me for just a second here. I just want to fix the red lines first. And these references I'm going to change. Now we're actually going to be changing the way that the save and the load scriptables work. Where instead of using a for loop, we're going to use something called a while loop, which I don't know if we've used yet on this tutorial system or not. Anyway, so the idea is when the player starts the game, so when this inventory saver object becomes enabled, we want to load all of the things into the inventory. The problem is, though, if we're just loading things into the inventory, that list, so like, let's actually go back here, Game Save Manager, I'm going to put my inventory saver script on here. Name objects, line 9. I missed something somewhere. Oh, I just didn't save it. All right. Back into Unity here. Let that compile for a second, and let's talk about the inventory saver and the kind of the logic behind all of this. And then, like I said, we'll still go over every single one of those lines. So, all right. So this needs to know the player inventory. So I'm going to go to my scriptable objects, inventory stuff, and load in my general player inventory. Currently, my general player inventory just has the sword and the bow, and my green health potion is currently set to 0, and my red health potion is currently set to 0. So in my Game Save Manager, I've got my general player inventory. Now that general player inventory, if we save it between scenes, it's going to save the scriptable object just fine, but it's going to have trouble saving what these two references in it are. So what I'm going to do is save each of these as their own individual file. Now, that means that when we reload the game, the inventory is going to know that it should have two things in it, but it won't know what they are. So we need to tell it to clear anything that was in here, to go back down to 0, and then when we load stuff in, we're just going to add it onto the list based on where it is in the inventory file. So to do that, in onEnable, before I load the scriptables, I'm going to go to myinventory.myinventory, and I want to clear it. So that's going to make it nothing. So we're enabling the game, it's going to the inventory, and it's clearing everything out of there so that it's back down to 0 things. If you don't have this, we'll have some issues with the inventory manager script, because the inventory manager script wants to read stuff from the player inventory, and if there's an empty space in the player inventory but nothing in there, it's going to freak out. So inventory saver. All right, now let's look at this load scriptables here. So currently, we're going through everything that's in the inventory.count. However, since we're changing that and we're clearing the inventory, the count is going to be 0, so it won't load anything with how it currently is set up. So instead, I'm just going to get rid of that for loop here, and I'm going to replace it with a while loop. I'm also going to, because I hate it when things are off, if you hit Shift Tab on a selection of text, you can tab the whole thing over. So What I'm going to do is I'm going to say while, oops, and I want it to be in place of the if. So while file exists application.persistentDataPath 0.inv. Okay, for a second I thought I was in my game data saver. These should both be .inv. But now, since I'm not using the for loop anymore, it doesn't know what I is. So I'm just going to say I is equal to 0. Oops, sorry, int I is equal to 0 up here at the start. And then after we close our file, I'm going to increase I, so I++. So we're kind of forcing in a for loop here, but this is not going to rely on how many things are in the inventory. Instead, it's going to rely on how many .inv files there are. And we'll talk about exactly where this gets saved in just a moment. So while there is a file at the data path with string.format, and then this string.format is here to say like the first inventory item is going to be 0.inv, and then 1.inv, 2.inv, and so on. We're going to create a file object, which is going to be the open version of that data path, and we have to use a file mode for that. We're going to create a binary formatter. We're going to call it binary, and that's just going to be there so that we can take information from the file and put it back onto a game object. And to do that, we're going to use JSON utility from JSON Overwrite, and we have to take our file as a string, and we're going to put it back onto myInventory.myInventory.I. Now, there's another issue here, and that issue is because we don't have anything currently in our inventory. When we try to do this, we'll get an error. So we're going to create a temporary inventory item, and we're going to overwrite that temporary item, and then we're going to add that temporary item to the list. So it's going to be a little weird because it won't be the exact item we want. It'll be a copy of it, which is strange. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to say, we'll call this var temp, and var is variant. It's a JavaScript thing, but it works in this case for C#. And I'm going to say this is equal to a new scriptable object dot create instance, and the instance I want to create is inventory item. And I'm sure I did that wrong. New, I thought it was create instance. Okay, I need to check something here. Hold on for just a moment. Aha, that's what I needed to do. I don't need to use the new. So it's just scriptable object.create instance inventory item. And we're going to save that as the temp. Now, when we do the JSON overwrite, instead of overwriting it directly onto my inventory, we're going to overwrite it onto that temporary file. And then we're going to add that temporary file to the my inventory. So I'm going to say my inventory.add temp. And there we go. So that's what we're going to do to load the scriptables. Now to save the scriptables, what we're going to do is we're going to delete all of the sorry about that weird cut. So when we save the scriptables, we're going to delete all of the .inv files that already exist, and then we're going to save all new versions of them. This isn't necessarily necessary. However, let's say that your player lost an inventory item. If when you save, you're not getting rid of all of the inventory items and then overriding them with fresh ones, when we load, let's say there's a fourth inventory item and there should only be 3 items because the player used that, it was a key or whatever, you're going to load that fourth inventory script back onto it. So we need to make sure that we're resetting all of them, is what I call this here, and then saving them. So before we save, I'm going to call reset scriptables right in here. Reset scriptables. And what this is going to do is it's going to go over everything in my inventory count, but Again, we don't want to do it that way because that, again, let's say that we got rid of an item and now we only have 3 items. We want to make sure we're getting rid of all of the .inv files that exist at the application persistent data path. So I'm going to change this a little bit. Again, I'm going to create an integer I and set it equal to 0. And I'm going to say while file.exists persistent data path I file.delete, and then we're going to increase I++. Weird smiley face there. Okay, now we're going to call reset scriptables before we save any scriptables. And now we can use an actual for loop like we did in the game save manager. We're going to go for every item in my inventory.count, file stream file equals file.create at the persistent data path plus whichever one we're on .inv. So 0.inv, 1.inv, 2.inv. Binary formatter binary is a new binary formatter. We're creating a JSON object this time because we're going to serialize onto the file that JSON object. And the JSON object is created by using Unity's JSON utility .toJSON file or function, and we're going to use it on my inventory I. This is why we need to make sure that those inventory items are serializable so that we can convert them to JSON and then close the file again. So if you missed any of that, the reset scriptables, the save scriptables, or the load scriptables, feel free to pause your video on any of those frames or go to the GitHub link and download the fresh version of the project. All right, so I'm going to save this and I'm going to go back into Unity here. Okay, and now in Unity, I'm going to let that compile for a second. We'll talk about how to make this work, and then we'll verify it works when we actually test it on a built version of the project. Okay, so let's hit play. Now, as we play, it should turn this from 2 items to 0 items because we don't have, oh, nope. Okay, this is actually left over from last time. It says type mismatch here, but that's not real. If you double click on it, you can see that's left over from when I was testing this. So let's actually fix that. Okay, so if you're using Windows, your persistent data path can be found at, it's C users, no, not program files, users, whatever your name is, and then now you need to actually take matters into your own hands because this is usually a hidden file. So in Windows, you just click up here, /appdata/local-low, and then inside there you need to find the name of whatever's doing it. So in my example, you'd want to think it's Unity or Unity Technologies. It's not. Unless you've set up your company name in your project settings, it's default company. And then you can see, like, you guys can see all the weird little things I've worked on. This is YouTube Zelda-like. So I'm going to open that up. And you can see here, these are the .inv files that were already here from when I was testing this earlier. So I'm just going to grab both of these .inv files and delete them. And now, if I keep an eye on my player's inventory, when I hit play, you should see this go to 0 and then not be reset because there's nothing in the player's inventory because I deleted those .inv files. All right, cool. So now it's back to 0. Now if I go over these potions, and let's open up our inventory panel, potions are there. If I go out, and again, I just want to prove this is going to work, so I'm going to change my size to 0. I'm going to hit play. And it should change back to 2 on its own because it's reading from those files. Unless I did something wrong, which is incredibly possible. Let's go to our inventory, and there we go. We have our potions. All right, so let's test this on an actual build. And to do that, what I want to do is go back here because the persistent data path is the same for whether you're using the editor or using a .exe file. So I'm just going to delete these really quickly so that I don't already have them. Then I want to go to my player inventory. I'm going to make, the size is still 2, and it's going to be sword, and bow. I should have saved it with that. Let's do that really quickly. So I'm going to hit play. This is a mess. But I want to make sure that that sword and that bow are in the inventory when we start, just because it's going to bug me if I don't. So I'm going to set the size to 2, and then in here I'm going to do bow is the second item, sword is the first item, and now when I disable, it'll know it. Okay, cool, there we go. I should also be able to verify that by going here, and I've got my 0.inv file, and it's readable, which is weird because I thought when you use the binary formatter it converted it to hexadecimal, but it apparently does not. You can create a what is it called? An encryption function to make sure that your players aren't able to edit stuff as easily as this, but for now we're just kind of going over the bare basic functions, like the idea behind everything. Okay, so I'm gonna go to File, Build Settings, and I want to build it for Windows, x86 64, and I'm going to hit Build, and I'm going to build it into a Builds folder. If you don't already have a Builds folder in your project, go ahead and add one. New folder, Build, Select Folder, and it's going to take a minute to do this. While it's doing that, I forgot to mention that on Mac, your persistent data path is going to be somewhere different. And I'm going to find that persistent data path and put it in the description down below so that you can find and erase those on your Mac if you need to. Okay, and here we are. We've got our build up, so I'm just going to double click on YouTube Zelda Like, which is the name of the game here. And we're going to have an issue with the intro screen. Yeah, this is still all messed up. We'll fix that very, very soon. Let's go to a new game. So in our game, let's go to our inventory. For some reason it didn't get the pictures. That's weird. Let's see if it gets the pictures for these. Yep, nope, pictures are just fine. So I'm going to quit to main. Let's just close out. And then let's reopen it and make sure that we have our 4 different items in our inventory when we restart here. So new game. And there we go. Now I'm weirded out by that. So let's go check our bow. Oh, that's why. It lost its sprite. Okay, cool. So it's nothing wrong with the coding. Something happened and I made it lose its sprite. Okay, but cool. So we're saving our inventory between scenes. Now there's a few things that we can do to polish this up to make it work better. Well, I guess it's not actually polish. It's more extra features. Somebody had mentioned getting items from a chest, and I had kind of covered that, but I covered it with my old inventory system. I can come back to that, but for now I kind of want to take a break from the inventory. I am just like everybody else, and sometimes I get bored with things. So I feel like the inventory system is, for the most part, pretty feature complete. The other thing is, for things like these, what you can do, and I covered this in an earlier episode, but you can create what's called a Boolean value. So in my scriptable objects here, if I just create like a create Boolean value, and I'll have this be like red potion there or something like that. And then we can have this have a value connected to the red potion. And when you do that on trigger enter, we can turn that false. And then we can also have the red potion check to see if it should be there or not. You can do this with heart containers too, or anything that you want to exist just once in the scene. That way you're not collecting like a million of them, keys, stuff like that. So the next episode is going to be fixing some errors, some issues, and upgrading to Unity 2019.1. Now that 2019.2 is about to come out, we're going to upgrade to 2019.1. But there's a few things that break when you're upgrading to 2019.1. And we need to fix that intro scene thing. So that's what the next video is going to be. And then we're going to move on to kind of roughing out an ability system. Some of the abilities we're going to talk about would be a dash ability, hookshot, fire wand, and I'm open to hearing others too. I'm not super keen on jumping because jumping is more implemented with layers than it is anything else. And you need to have a very good, strong sense of your logic on your layers when you're doing jumping. But if you guys have any other suggestions, feel free. This video is a few days late, I know. It's like the third time I recorded it. We're at the point in the project where the videos aren't always going to be on schedule. Sorry about that, but I mean, at this point, it takes a lot more time and effort to create the video now than it did a year ago when I started this series. So apologies for videos being late. If you want to, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like. You can subscribe or hit the bell icon to make sure that you find out when I post new videos. If you hit the like, that'll tell YouTube that you want to see more videos like me. Maybe not necessarily me, but it'll help the algorithm send more videos like this to you. So you can join my Discord, follow me on Twitter to find out when I post new videos. Otherwise, I hope everybody out there has themselves a wonderful day.